The Qubic Systems BT1 transforms the sim racing experience. Not really in the ways I expected, and not for the things I assumed. There's no doubt that the action is enhanced in some amazing ways, and immersion is sharply increased. It does come with added fatigue, discomfort and intensity that needs to be considered and controlled. It's not without its cons, and if you're a road racer, then you might find yourself scaling back the forces over time to make it more livable, but in rally sims, such as Dirt and WRC, I was simply astonished at how the experience is completely rewritten, with the positives obliterating any negatives. The thought of starting a rally stage without this gadget fills me with sadness. This is great for road racing, but an absolute must-have for gravel diehards especially, and is the only sim racing accessory recently to make my hairs stand on end quite like they did. This equipment requires more commitment than your average accessory, but nothing else can really do what it does. Buckle up as I explain. Before we get into it, the QS-BT1 featured was provided by Qubic Systems, free for review. However, this is a review, not an ad. Good and bad points will be covered as I see them, and all words are my own. Watch the whole video with pros and cons before making a decision. But if you do proceed to buy, then using the affiliate links in the video description to travel to regional distributors will help support me and this channel to continue doing what I do, and thank you for doing so. As a result of both of those points, I do mark videos of this nature as paid promotion in YouTube. First up, a quick summary of the talking points. Yes, it's so worth it. It's not cheap, but the impact on the experience is brilliant and shockingly physical despite not being actually motion. Road racing is enhanced greatly, but spend time with the settings to find your ideal balance between comfort and violence. Less is sometimes more. Rally is absolutely transformed beyond my expectations. The BT1 is hands down a must-have for rally fans. You will love it. The harness you use with it does matter quite a lot. I strongly advise a 2-inch 6-point harness with shoulder pads, as I found that to be much more responsive and comfortable pairing than the 3-inch belt I started with. Overall, this is an excellent add-on for immersion hunters. It absolutely adds a fresh, interesting and fun new layer to sim racing. Comfort and convenience will take a bit of a dip, but it's so worth it. So what is it? The Qubic Systems QS-BT1 is a belt tensioner system for sim racing which has massive appeal to immersion hunters. I know this because I've coveted one for a while and was all too glad to review it once asked. You attach it to your cockpit and clamp it to the straps of a racing harness which you install on your cockpit as well as this, and it will pull on them to apply tension, thereby physically interacting with you. It's a direct drive system. 2 motors reside in this housing to pull on the left and right belts independently. The resulting forces on your torso attempt to fool your senses into believing you are undergoing G-forces, motion, physical turbulence, experiencing simulated inertia, and adding new angles of immersion to your sim racing setup. It's a system that can happily stand alone. Whilst it will often be found holding hands with full motion setups, it doesn't have to be. I'm using this without any supporting motion system. Before I turned the first lap, I was expecting a few things. I had my own preconceptions of what I thought I was about to feel. I hoped that immersion would be greatly enhanced. I hoped it would introduce a new dimension of flavour to racing, and I hoped it would become an immediate and obvious keeper, leaving no doubt onto the table as to its worth. I was hoping that it would somehow produce an immersive feeling of speed and substance that was completely new to me and add a whole new layer to the thing I love. I wanted this to be good. I spent the first couple of testing sessions, my first few hours, in Le Mans Ultimate and iRacing, my 2 most frequented sims to date. Although it was immediately obvious that this was going to be fundamentally a big change to the experience, it wasn't immediately obvious whether it would be in a good way, as I was distracted by unignorable discomfort around my neck as it got pinched and rubbed by the belts, and that things weren't anywhere near dialed in when it came to settings. It was quite clear to me from the get-go that what I was experiencing out of a box might be impressive, but it was kinda wrong. For me, anyway. Motorsport harnesses like this, they can be bought in 2-inch or 3-inch variants. This right here is a 3-inch variant, and I'm not liking it. It's not comfortable for me. It's mainly the pressure on the neckline because these straps are so wide and you've got two of them, it sort of, it kind of squeezes the neck in the middle. So I'm not liking that. I can't really do a full race length feeling like this because it's almost like it's cutting off the circulation to my head. It just wasn't right for me, and I just knew it wasn't meant to be like this. So I switched to a 2-inch 6-point harness with shoulder pads. That's the Sebelt unit seen in pretty much the entirety of this review, and everything changed to the better. It was more comfortable, less restrictive, and less weighty. Took all the pressure off my neck, helped add detail and subtlety to some of the effects. It just felt better all round. Based on my experience, I would absolutely recommend a 2-inch 6-point harness to go with this system. You'll need to ensure your bucket seat has holes on the shoulder, holes on the hips, and a hole at the front in order to utilise that 6-point. Your opinion may vary, but this one tip would have been a golden nugget of advice if I was on the other side of the screen right now. The belt system matters quite a bit. Links are in the description for what I've used. So, with the comfort and configuration problem resolved, I could test the system as it's meant to be. How does it feel for road racing? What's the belt tensioner do for the experience? Now, some things are hard to show on video, but throughout most of the shots that follow, the belt's movement can be seen by watching the Sebelt shoulder pads move, but mainly you can tell by the amount my head wobbles as my torso is pushed and nudged around. So the most prominent and dramatic effect, and the one you're probably most keen to know about, is braking, especially heavy braking. The snap transition from full throttle in 6th gear to hard braking is met with a brisk and brutal tightening of the belt straps. Really quick, really snappy, the force of which is concentrated on the upper half of the torso and shoulders, but it does achieve the effects of making you feel like you're undergoing heavy forward G's, as though you'd be thrown out of your bucket seat like a catapult if it weren't for the belts. Initially, this was the start of the show, as you'd expect. On acceleration, the belts are kind of powerless because it's the wrong direction for them to be doing anything, but it does help that on upshifts, the belts can momentarily jab you to create the illusion of a blip in forward motion, and this does work pretty well, no question. It is quite fun. On braking too, the downshifts are punctuated by a kick from the belts, which further builds that sense that the virtual car is a real thing and you are in it and you are slamming on the anchors. Through cornering, the belts can tighten asymmetrically to craft a sense of cornering G-forces, either on the left or the right belt. I found these effects to be far too strong by default, and I reduced the strength quite a lot so that they didn't do too much, but they definitely do add something extra to the very act of cornering at high loads. Engine vibration effects do also conduct through the belt fairly well and help to add a background furriness and warmness that helps the belts feel alive between corners when they don't have so much to do. One setting above all made the difference, however: road harshness, and somehow it's turned off by default. As other reviewers have pointed out, it's kind of madness that this setting doesn't arrive enabled because it offers so much. This setting commands the belts to simulate the movement of the chassis itself in response to road undulations, curb strikes, and so on, and it brings the whole experience alive, especially at bumpy circuits like Sebring. The effect is uncannily immersive and deserves co-star credits with the braking effects because whilst the big dramatic effects like hard braking are the things you think you're going to love the most, the road harshness setting will sprinkle equal amounts of joy onto things, and believe me when I say, we're just getting started. Wait until you hear about Rally. However, there are downsides, and these are downsides you probably haven't had to contend with up to this stage in your sim racing cockpit build-up. For the first time ever in your sim racing journey, your overall comfort level will go down, depending on how hard you push this. Even with a more comfortable 2-inch belt with shoulder pads, the occasional spot of discomfort I would get where the belt just happened to settle on my shoulder in a certain way for too long, prompting me to fidget and fix it from time to time, did weigh against the positives of the enhanced feels you get. It's a bit like wearing a school backpack versus not wearing one. A lot of the time you won't notice it's there, but there'll be the odd moment here and there when it feels like it just isn't sitting well on your shoulders. It's a mild irritant sometimes. Speaking more broadly, the act of sitting down and strapping myself into the harness takes approximately 30 seconds, which doesn't sound like much, but it's a long time when there's only 31 seconds to go until the green light. Add to that the number of times I've buckled myself in only to realise I've left my headphones on the other side of the room. So annoying. On the road racing side, you're probably going to find yourself reducing forces to a gentler, less fatiguing level after the first weeks of play, in much the same way you would turn down the force feedback torque of a wheel if you found it was dominating your experience a bit too much, and I've done exactly this. As the weeks went by, I wanted to feel less discomfort, friction and physical interaction, so I scaled the force levels down. The brake effect is now much less violent, the gear shifts are a nudge rather than a punch, the cornering constriction is more subtle, but even at low levels, the power of suggestion means you still get all of that subliminal flavour out of the belts and the experience without the discomfort. It is by no means ineffective, it actually means I appreciate it more because it complements the drive rather than dominating it. It doesn't start to wear thin halfway through an hour-long race. Leave the powerful shock and awe profiles for mates that come round to try it. Use the toned down profile for your own extended seat times. It took me a while for that wisdom to appear to me. So, after about 2 or 3 weeks of just testing road racing sims, Le Mans Ultimate, iRacing, making up my mind about this belt tensioner system, I gave Dirt Rally 2 a try just to cover all bases. Boy, this was a huge oversight. I should have started here. What an absolute gem this belt system is for rally driving. Simply unbelievable fun and breathtakingly immersive. I cannot overstate how much this transforms the very nature of it, and I cannot begin to describe how it felt to have my brain pressure washed with endorphins and adrenaline upon the first test. It really surprised me. After 5 years of being in basically a proper sim rig, I thought sensations like these were basically behind me. Incredible. Unlike road racing where the effects are sometimes far apart, spread out to a tempo that aligns with braking zones and corners, in rally it's a non-stop shower of stimulation. The lumps and bumps of the gravel texture underneath the tyres are conducted through the belts wonderfully, and the texture of each road surface can be felt. The hops and skips of the chassis as you rip through the stages is conveyed beautifully, and the compressions through dips and the bottom of hills causes the belts to squeeze you into your seat. But best of all are jumps. When you go over a jump and the car leaves the ground, the belts fall silent, and when you crash back down to the floor, the belts slam your torso in a manner that makes you actually wince and brace for it in a way that force feedback alone simply cannot do. The first time I experienced a severe undulating section in a stage, complete with proper jumps, my hairs actually stood on end and I laughed. I was so fully immersed. This was an instant stamp of approval for me, and I found myself driving stage after stage after stage, just seeking out the next thrilling section that would scratch that same itch, and I would find it. It's a joy. I loved it so much it prompted me to buy EAWRC, where I continue to have truly epic experiences. The added joy and smiles this thing has brought to my rally experience has me shouting from the rooftops about it. I've spent more time rallying these past few weeks than the past few years. It used to be a palate cleanser, a little sideshow. Now rally is part of the diet. It's exceptional. So let's rewind and touch upon installation and the quirks before I wrap up with my overall conclusion. Expect it to take around 2 hours at a leisurely pace. The unit bolts to the back of your profile cockpit easy enough. It's the belts that will take most of the time because you need to adjust the harness to suit you perfectly first before you then attach the tensioner unit, which piggybacks the rear straps. The belt clamps are quite finicky, so measure twice, install once. Take your time because adjusting the clamps after you're done isn't a 2-minute job. Needless to say, if you don't have an aluminium profile cockpit or a Qubic motion system, you may need something custom in order to mount it. I would strongly advise you to join Qubic's Discord community where advice should be available. In honesty, it's a good idea for all buyers and potential buyers and owners to join that group and check out the existing customer installs for inspiration. There are 2 low friction belt guides included which may help. I personally found they didn't make any detectable difference to the belt's ability to work, at least not the 2-inch system, but they did dig into my shoulder blades. Many folks go all in and install little pulley roller guides. I personally find the system works absolutely brilliantly without them, but not everybody does. This will depend on so many factors: the shape of your seat, the model it is, It really has to be done by a case-by-case basis, and belt friction is the #1 enemy of this mechanism. Minimizing it only helps things. One quirk is that there's no power button on the unit itself. Turning it off and on boils down to turning off the power, which for me is just doing this. Quite odd that there isn't an on-off button on the unit itself, but it's small beans. In terms of overall noise, the belt unit itself is very, very quiet. Any noise I do get is caused by the belt slacking off at the rear and the hooks clanking on the back bracket at times. Could be easily dampened with some tape, but it's just not a big enough problem for me to have felt the need to do it. There's a very quiet fan that will run if the system needs cooling. This used to be always running, but a recent update changed it to only come on when necessary, so that's nice. Qubic also recently changed the power supply to a fanless version, as seen here. So the unit overall is now much quieter than it was even 3 months ago. It's a generally low drama system. It's not something that's going to breach the peace in your household. Touching upon the software briefly, it's great. Each game has its own profile. Even individual cars can have their own profile if you insist. It has the capacity to detect and compartmentalize them, which will be important for some of you. Not me, my profiles are set game by game, and that does me fine. My only advice to you is that by default, the effects are very strong with a lot of torque. The first time I stepped on the brakes to test this, I nearly said hello to my breakfast. Now I know how it would feel to be given the Heimlich maneuver by a Boston Dynamics robot. The cost of a belt tensioner system is currently £1,425 including VAT for the QS-BT1, and the harness with shoulder pads that I chose cost me £232 including VAT. So all in all, to add the system as seen would have cost me £1,657 if I'd have had to pay for the BT1. For some perspective, a Simucube Active Pedal Pro is £1,554, and having used and reviewed both, if I had to choose between them in a battle of immersion, the belt tensioner wins without a second thought. It has way more impact on immersion. A system like this is so tempting because the cheapest movement and motion systems are still so much more costly than this, and this is an add-on, not a platform on which you must build. It doesn't require as much commitment in terms of money, time or mechanics. The appeal is obvious, it's just about whether it lives up to that. So let's sum it up, my final thoughts. It's been around 4 weeks of testing time, and it's been one of the most interesting upgrades I've experienced along the way. Few pieces of equipment have commanded so much thought and deliberation, and few pieces of equipment have rewarded my patience and time as much as this. Because it got better and better as I revised my settings and explored things. It took time to fully take root, but so it has. The dimension of feedback introduced with this system is pretty dramatic and unique. For most people, this will be wholly new territory, like it was for me. So if you're looking for a completely new edge to your sim racing experience to freshen it up and make it feel new again, you'll definitely get that here. The worst thing that can happen is spending a lot of money and feeling little impact to the fun you have. There's no danger of that with this. For road racing, there's no doubt it raises the overall satisfaction and immersion level. Your hands and feet already have something to do. This gives your torso something to feel. You'll pay for it with a drop in overall comfort and added bodily fatigue as well as the money, at least until you admit to yourself that it's time to drop the strength, calm it down a bit. Then you will find true balance and enlightenment with something that adds so much to the experience without costing too much in the way of comfort. It really does raise the base level of fun and intrigue in every lap. For rally, it really is unquestionably amazing and an essential add-on if it's within budget. You will not be disappointed, and comfort isn't really a factor. Rally is by nature very intense and all-consuming. This complements it beautifully. It has so much to do, but you don't consciously feel the harness, you focus on the experience. Rallying without this is something I can't stomach. There's really no going back, and I find myself wanting to spend more time in that discipline to get that fix of excitement. So if you're a rally fan, no joke, this is a one-way purchase. You will not be needing that receipt. Ultimately, did I get what I hoped for? Definitely. After 4 weeks of exploration and an initially cold start, I've made up my mind conclusively. I consider the BT1 to be one of the rare few accessories that do genuinely add joy, depth and immersion in a whole new way, and I'm confident that those who buy it and give themselves time to get to know it will never part with it. An excellent add-on, and I'm glad to have one. So there we are. I hope that was entertaining and informative, but if you have any questions, feel free to pop it in the comments. I'll do my best to answer. Check the video description for links to retailers, and if you have one of these, share your thoughts if you agree or disagree or have advice to future buyers that I didn't cover. Cheers again.
Don't cut, 4 right short, caution 80.